fellow Toastmaster. I am at home in two countries. I grew up in West Germany, also known as the Federal Republic of Germany, in a small mining town 100 kilometers north of Frankfurt, called Neuhof. This is my town, if you want to have a look at it. To this day, Neuhof, with about 5,000 people, has a big underground salt mine. In October, 60 years ago, when my dad arrived in this town as a refugee looking for work. I meant to say it was October, 60 years ago, when he arrived. For almost 40 years, he worked in this pit as a miner. Both my parents are children of the war and lost their fathers in World War II. My dad had fled the Russian occupation from East Germany as a 17-year-old, wanting to live in a free country. My mom was born in this small mining town, which after the war was occupied by the American troops. By the time she met my father, she had become an orphan at age 17 with one older brother who had left Germany for Canada. When I was born, my parents could have never ever imagined that their only daughter would marry a Russian man and immigrate to Canada. 1 month after I was born, the Berlin Wall was completed. It was August 13, 1961. The Iron Curtain would continue to divide West and East Germany for the next 28 years. With most of my father's relatives on the east side of the border in the so-called German Democratic Republic, deprived of their freedom, my longing for freedom and justice was deeply formed from an early age. I grew up with 3 younger brothers, with whom I shared one bedroom until I was 11. That's when we all moved into our own house, which my parents built with the help of mostly friends and neighbors. My mother was a resourceful, very resourceful homemaker, and my dad by then worked 2 jobs, underground as a miner and as a lifeguard at the community pool. I have very fond memories of my childhood in this house with a big garden full of fruit trees and a big vegetable section, lots of animals, big and small, my dog, and lots of boys to play with. I was the only girl in the neighborhood. We called our home House of the Open Door, since everyone was welcome. Food was shared, and my mom was always there for us, the neighbors, friends, and other family members, and sometimes even strangers. I lived in this town until I was 19. That's when I moved to the big city. By then I had a great desire to discover the rest of the world, and I did. To this day, when I visit my parents, who still live in the house they built, I feel at home. For the past almost 19 years now, Victoria has been my home. I don't own a house or a garden, but I have lived in Victoria nearly as long as I have lived in my German hometown. Victoria feels like home. It's the people that make it feel like home. My family in Victoria is a small family. It's my Russian husband, who became a Canadian citizen, and our almost 20-year-old daughter, who has German and Canadian citizenship. I am still a landed immigrant, also known as permanent resident. Let's flash back to my educational and professional background and why I came to Canada. And I apologize, I really have to do this now, sorry.
Okay.
So about my educational and professional background and why I actually ended up in Canada. I left school after grade 10 at age 16 and entered a 2.5-year apprenticeship to become a legal assistant. Shortly after, I went back to school to complete high school. At age 19, as mentioned before, I left home to study economics at the University of Applied Sciences in the city of Mainz. As a postgraduate student, I moved to Leeds in England for 1 year. I finished with a Bachelor of Economics in Germany and a Diploma in Administration Studies in England. The year was 1985. Finding a job after graduation wasn't so easy for me because of my idealistic beliefs. Eventually, I moved from Mainz to Frankfurt to work at the Consumer Protection Agency, informing consumers about environmental issues regarding household products. After about 3 years, I went to work for a retail company purchasing and selling environmentally sustainable products. After about 2 years with this company, I looked again for a new job. I had turned 30 and met my future husband, who had come to Germany from Russia on a scholarship. He lived in Hamburg. I found the job I desired and moved from Frankfurt to Hamburg to work as the assistant of the managing director of the Hamburg Environmental Institute. For about 3 years I worked there. Then in November '94, life changed again, but this time more profoundly. Our daughter was born. When she was 16 months old, my husband, daughter, and I moved to Victoria. I was still on maternity leave. It was March '96 when we arrived in the new world. My husband had received a work visa for a 1-year postdoc position with the Canadian Climate Centre in Victoria. His temporary position as a climate scientist developed over a number of years into a permanent position, and we just continued staying. We went with the flow of life. It was not really a conscious decision to immigrate to Canada. It just happened. We were very lucky to land in such a beautiful place on the Pacific Ocean. Arriving in Victoria meant starting a new life. First of all, to establish a social infrastructure. I met wonderful people at playgrounds and social places. I volunteered for different organizations. I searched for good role models in parenting and was very fortunate to discover co-op preschools, or a cooperative preschool. My interest in health and well-being, particularly in using food as medicine and in the body-mind connection, developed and has grown ever since. It wasn't always easy, but overall I felt happy and very privileged to live in Victoria. A paid job had to suit my need for timely flexibility around our daughter's schedule, and I found one shortly after she started kindergarten in '99, 5 years after I had left my last job in Germany. I started on call, which led to part-time at the Greater Victoria Child and Family Association, and worked there for the next 7 years. By then, my body, despite years of belly, dancing and yoga, showed signs of unhappiness. I suffered a frozen shoulder and really wanted to leave the office world. For many years, people often asked me if I taught yoga, because I had been practicing and promoting yoga as an individual, as an executive of the Hatha Yoga Association of Victoria. Finally, in 2007, I completed a yoga teacher training at a local yoga studio. It was one of the best decisions of my life. I started teaching yoga in the spring of 2008 and continued to learn and teach. The best part is that there is still so much to discover, and that I can work directly with people in a helping capacity. One of the first kind people I met in Victoria gave me a homemade card with the words, "Home is where you make your nest." She was right, but there is more to this for me. To me, it was never just about the nest which determined the feeling of being at home. More important to me is that I know people around me. I can truly call Victoria my home now because I often meet people on the street who I just know. This is the same when I go and visit my parents. There are still people on the streets in my hometown, Neuhof, who I just know. We greet, we may chat, share some laughter, or perhaps some concerns, or even tears, and say goodbye. I am at home in 2 countries.